What's going on, boxing fans? Julian Williams here with The Distance. Got another video for you guys tonight. Antonio Tarver returning to the sport of boxing as a heavyweight. Well, I'm just going to give my opinion and my thoughts on this because it's been all over the forums and all over the sites as of late, as of the weekend when he made that announcement that he's returning to boxing as a heavyweight. But this is my question: does anybody really care that he's going to heavyweight? Because when you look at the heavyweight division, you have two fighters who are brothers that are dominating the division, and at the same time, Tarver was dominating the light heavyweight division, or if you could say that. While Vladimir was, I think Tarver was pretty much the number one light heavyweight after Vladimir got knocked out by Layman Brewster around that time frame, and when I think Vili was fighting Danny Williams. So that's quite a while, and not to mention the age bracket. Me personally, I do think that if Tarver wanted to move up in weight, then I think cruiserweight would be a way to kind of test the waters out with, to be quite honest, because he never fought at heavyweight. And his last fight against Dawson, which was like about a year ago, about 15 months ago, not 13 months ago, he was simply dominated by Chad Dawson. And not one but two fights back to back was dominated by Chad Dawson. And this fight, he was simply outboxed. And a couple years back, or about, I'd say 4 years back, he was simply defeated by Bernard Hopkins. And people say, it was the weight, losing all the weight to come down to light heavyweight, after moving up to do the Rocky movie, had played a part in that. Whether it did or not, he pretty much kind of showed that he was a bit of a one-trick pony when he fought Roy Jones Jr. Now, in the first fight, I did have the first fight a draw when I first watched it. Second fight, definitely Tarver. Third fight, definitely Tarver. Glenn Johnson, he turned around and he lost the first fight. He lost the first fight to Glenn Johnson, and then the second fight he got the championship back. And to me, the second fight wasn't really too much of an eventful fight. I watched it in June of 2005 was when I watched it, and to be quite honest, what does Antonio Tarver do for the heavyweight division? And he does absolutely nothing, really. All he does is bring another name into the division. Now, there's a right way to bring Antonio Tarver in as a heavyweight, but he's 40 years old, and with a lot of older fighters can get old overnight. Just imagine Antonio Tarver competing in the ring against a Tomas Sadamek, or Antonio Tarver in the ring with David Haye or one of the Klitschko brothers. If those fights would ever come to fruition, I could see him more so fighting a Chris Arreola, a guy trying to come up. I could see him trying to fight Monty Barrett, because everybody and their mom has fought Monty Barrett. I could see him fighting Monty Barrett. I could see him, fighting, even Oliver McCall. I could see him fighting him. I could see him fighting Michael Grant. I could see him fighting these lower level guys who are never going to be on contender status ever again. I could see him fighting and beating those guys. And he does possess kind of an awkward style, being a southpaw fighter. He does kind of possess an awkward style. But one thing is for certain, I could say this with confidence: he has no chance in hell at beating one of the Klitschkos. And out of every champion in the heavyweight division, the closest whoever, the only person that he would even have a minimal chance of beating is David Haye, and that's a minimal chance of beating the David Haye. So honestly, I don't know what the move to heavyweight does for Antonio Tarver or the division. I honestly don't know what it does. I don't know if it's a good thing. I guess it's a good thing because it brings another name. But he's jumping from 175 to above 200 pounds, maybe 215. And it wasn't like Tomas Adamek. Tomas Adamek went to like 175 after he fought once. He held that championship for a while. Then he moved to cruiserweight, fought at cruiserweight for at least about a year, 2 years, and then he worked his way into heavyweight. And I think that's what Tarver pretty much needs to do if he wants to make that move up to heavyweight. And don't get me wrong, there's some fighters out there that were light heavyweights and were able to move into that heavyweight frame just fine. When there wasn't an in-between heavyweight and light heavyweight, there were a lot of fighters that did just fine. But some of these light heavyweights didn't go on to become heavyweight champions. And to be quite honest, since the alphabet organizations, nobody has ever went up from, or actually since Michael Spinks, nobody has truly went up from light heavyweight and won the heavyweight championship of the world. Or was maybe the light heavyweight champion of the world was the lineal light heavyweight champion of the world, moved up to heavyweight. You can argue Michael Moore, but Michael Moore only had one belt, which was the WBO championship, which was like the last belt made for out of the major sanctioning bodies. And Roy Jones was a titleist. And Michael Moore, you can argue, but he wasn't necessarily the light heavyweight champion of the world. I think Ray Leonard or Hearns was like the top guy light heavyweight around that time. I'm thinking they were. But Tarver is not gonna be that guy. I personally think that Tarver just needs to stick to commentating. And maybe what this can do, maybe this can bring heavyweight boxing to Showtime, because Showtime hasn't had a heavyweight fight or a major heavyweight fight in forever. The Tony Grano fight back in September, that was the last heavyweight fight I seen on Showtime. I can't remember the other guy's name, but it was Tony Grano versus, I just can't remember the guy's name. I just know the other guy was a hype job and stuff, and it was a big time upset. But maybe this can bring heavyweight boxing to Showtime. Who knows? But overall, this move to from light heavyweight to heavyweight, after being inactive for over a year, is quite ridiculous. Especially if you have something lined up to be, as a commentator, and apparently Showtime likes you enough that they continue to bring you back to do more shows. Then you should just stick to that, something where you have kind of a guaranteed job. But Showtime, they kind of love Antonio Tarver, because they were airing his fights against way lesser opposition, and also they brought him back as a commentator. But at the same time, that move to heavyweight does nothing. It just adds another name to the division. So anyway, this is my thoughts on that. But anyway, thanks for watching. That was The Distance. Peace.